Kruger National Park is one of the largest game reserves in Africa. It covers an area of 19,633 square kilometers in the provinces of Limpopo and Mpumalanga in northeastern South Africa, and extends 360 kilometers from north to south and 65 kilometers from east to west. The administrative headquarters are in Skukuza. Areas of the park were first protected by the government of the South African Republic in 1898, and it became South Africa's first national park in 1926. To the west and south of the Kruger National Park are the two South African provinces of Limpopo and Mpumalanga. In the north is Zimbabwe, and to the east is Mozambique. It is now part of the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Park, a peace park that links Kruger National Park with the Gonarezhou National Park in Zimbabwe, and with the Limpopo National Park in Mozambique. The park is part of the Kruger Canyons Biosphere, an area designated by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization as an International Man and Biosphere Reserve. The park has 9 main gates allowing entrance to the different camps. History. Sabi Game Reserve. In 1895, Jacob Louis van Wyk introduced in the Volksraad of the old South African Republic, a motion to create the game reserve which would become the Kruger National Park. That motion, introduced together with another Volksraad member by the name of A.K. Loveday, and accepted for discussion in September 1895 by a majority of 1 vote, resulted in the proclamation by Paul Kruger, President of the Transvaal Republic, on March 26, 1898, of a government wildlife park. This park would later be known as the Sabi Game Reserve and was expanded into the Kruger National Park in 1926. The park was initially created to control hunting and protect the diminished number of animals in the park. James Stevenson Hamilton became the first warden of the reserve in 1902. The reserve was located in the southern one-third of the modern park. Shingwedzi Reserve, named after the Shingwedzi River and now in northern Kruger National Park, was proclaimed in 1903. In 1926, Sabi Game Reserve, the adjacent Shingwedzi Game Reserve, and farms were combined to create Kruger National Park. During 1923, the first large groups of tourists started visiting the Sabi Game Reserve, but only as part of the South African Railway's popular Round in 9 tours. The tourist trains used the Salati railway line between Komatipoort on the Mozambican border and Tzaneen in Limpopo province. The tour included an overnight stop at Sabi Bridge and a short walk, escorted by armed rangers, into the bush. It soon became a highlight of the tour and it gave valuable support for the campaign to proclaim the Sabi Game Reserve as a national park. 1926 to 1946, after the proclamation of the Kruger National Park in 1926, the first 3 tourist cars entered the park in 1927, jumping to 180 cars in 1928 and 850 cars in 1929. Warden James Stevenson Hamilton retired on April 30, 1946, after 44 years as warden of the Kruger Park and its predecessor, the Sabi Game Reserve, 1946 to 1994. He was replaced by Colonel J.A.B. Sandberg of the South African Air Force. During 1959, work commenced to completely fence the park boundaries. Work started on the southern boundary along the Crocodile River and in 1960 the western and northern boundaries were fenced, followed by the eastern boundary with Mozambique. The purpose of the fence was to curb the spread of diseases, facilitate border patrolling and inhibit the movement of poachers. The Maculic area in the northern part of the park was forcibly taken from the Maculic people by the government in 1969 and about 1,500 of them were relocated to land to the south so that their original tribal areas could be integrated into the Greater Kruger National Park, 1994, present. In 1996 the Maculic tribe submitted a land claim for 19,842 hectares in the northern part of the Kruger National Park. The land was given back to the Maculic people, however, they chose not to resettle on the land but to engage with the private sector to invest in tourism, thus resulting in the building of several game lodges. In 2002, Kruger National Park, Gonarezhou National Park in Zimbabwe, and Limpopo National Park in Mozambique were incorporated into a peace park, the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Park. Geography. The park lies in the northeast of South Africa, in the eastern parts of Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces. Phalaborwa, Limpopo is the only town in South Africa that borders the Kruger National Park. It is one of the largest national parks in the world, with an area of 19,485 square kilometers. The park is approximately 360 kilometers long, and has an average width of 65 kilometers. At its widest point, the park is 90 kilometers wide from east to west. To the north and south of the park, two rivers, the Limpopo and the Crocodile respectively, act as its natural boundaries. To the east, the Lebombo Mountains separate it from Mozambique. Its western boundary runs parallel with this range, roughly 65 kilometers distant. The park varies in altitude between 200 meters in the east and 840 meters in the southwest near Berg en Dal. The highest point in the park is here, a hill called Gonarezhou. Several rivers run through the park from west to east, including the Sabi, Olifants, Crocodile, Letaba, Limpopo and Limpopo rivers. Climate: the climate of the Kruger National Park and Limpopo is subtropical. Summer days are humid and hot with temperatures often soaring to above 38 degrees Celsius. The rainy season is from September until May. The Kruger National Park website lists September and October as the driest periods, culminating in rains late in October. The dry winter season is the ideal time to visit this region for various reasons. There is less chance of contracting malaria and the days are milder. Viewing wildlife is more rewarding as the vegetation is more sparse and animals are drawn to the waterholes to drink every morning and evening. Flora and fauna: vegetation. Plants life in the park consists of four main areas: thorn trees and red bush willow belt. This area lies between the western boundary and roughly the center of the park south of the Olifants River. Combretums, such as the red bush willow, and acacia species predominate while there are a great number of marula trees. The acacias are dominant along the rivers and streams, the very dense Nwatumhiri bush along the Sabi River between Skukuza and Lower Sabi being a very good example. Knobthorn and marula belt, south of the Olifants River in the eastern half of the park, this area provides the most important grazing land. Species such as red grass and buffalo grass predominate while the knobthorn, leadwood and marula are the main tree species. Red bush willow and mopane belt, this area lies in the western half of the park, north of the Olifants River. The two most prominent species here are the red bush willow and the mopane tree. Shrub mopane belt: shrub mopane covers almost the entire northeastern part of the park. There are a number of smaller areas in the park which carry distinctive vegetation such as Ptoriuskop where the sickle bush and the silver cluster leaf are prominent. The Sandveld communities near Punta Maria are equally definitive, with a wide variety of unique species. Birds: out of the 517 species of birds found at Kruger, 253 are residents, 117 non-breeding migrants, and 147 nomads. Some of the larger birds require large territories or are sensitive to habitat degradation. 6 of these species, which are by and large restricted to Kruger and other extensive conservation areas, have been assigned to a fanciful grouping called the Big Six birds. They are the lappet-faced vulture, martial eagle, saddle-billed stork, cory-bustard, ground hornbill and the reclusive Pell's fishing owl, which is localized and seldom seen. There are between 25 and 30 breeding pairs of saddle-billed storks in the park, besides a handful of non-breeding individuals. In 2012 178 family groups of ground hornbills roamed the park and 78 nests were known, of which 50% were active. Mammals. All the big 5 game animals are found at Kruger National Park, which has more species of large mammals than any other African game reserve. There are weak cams set up to observe the wildlife. The park stopped culling elephants in 1994 and tried translocating them, but by 2004 the population had increased to 11,670 elephants, by 2006 to approximately 13,500 and by 2009 to 11,672. The park's habitats can only sustain about 8,000 elephants. The park started using annual contraception in 1995. but has stopped that due to problems with delivering the contraceptives and upsetting the herds. Kruger supports packs of the endangered African wild dog, of which there are thought to be only about 400 in the whole of South Africa. Reptiles, Kruger houses 114 species of reptile, including black mamba and 3,000 crocodiles. Amphibians and fish, 33 species of amphibians are found in the park, as well as 50 fish species. A zombie shark, Carcharinus lelicas, also known as the bull shark, was caught at the confluence of the Limpopo and Limpopo rivers in July 1950. Zambezi sharks tolerate fresh water and can travel far up rivers like the Limpopo. Anti-poaching measures. The park's anti-poaching unit consists of 650 SANParks game rangers, assisted by the SAPS and the SANDF. As of 2013, the park is equipped with 2 drones borrowed from Denel and 2 copyright Rospartial Gazelle helicopters, donated by the RAF to augment its airspace presence. Automated movement sensors relay intrusions along the Mozambique border to a control center, and a specialist dog unit has been introduced. Buffer zones have been established along the border with Mozambique, from where many poachers have infiltrated the park, as an alternative to costly new fences. The original 150 km long fences were dropped in 2002 to establish the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Park. The National Anti-Poaching Committee oversees all activities and coordinates interested parties. Poachers. Kruger's big game poachers operate with night vision instruments and large-caliber rifles, fitted with suppressors and sophisticated telescopes. They are mostly Mozambique citizens that initiate their carefully planned incursions from the Mozambique border region. In 2012 some 200 poachers were apprehended, while about 30 were killed in skirmishes. In July 2012, a Kruger game ranger and policeman were the first to die in an anti-poaching operation, while other employees reported intimidation by poachers. A Kruger personnel strike affected some anti-poaching operations, and a few employees have been directly implicated. In December 2012, Kruger started using a Seeker 2 drone against rhino poachers. The drone was loaned to the South African National Parks Authority by its manufacturer Denel Dynamics, South Africa. Rhino horn. Poachers mostly operate at or near full moon and make no distinction between white and black rhinos. Losses of black rhino are however low due to their reclusive and aggressive nature. With rhino horn fetching around $66,000 per kilogram, the site's ban on the trade in rhino horn has proved largely ineffectual. The second horn is sometimes hacked from the skull to obtain about 100 ml of moisture that is sold locally as traditional medicine. Poaching related to rhino horn escalated in the 21st century with 949 rhinos killed in Kruger in the first 12 years, and over 520 in 2013 alone. A planned memorandum of agreement between South Africa and Vietnam, in addition to the one with China, are seen as necessary milestones in stemming the tide, while negotiations with Thailand have not yet started. The amount of rhino horn held in storage is not publicly known. Since 2009 some Kruger rhinos have been fitted with invisible tracing devices in their bodies and horns which enable officials to locate their carcasses and to track the smuggled horns by satellite. South Africa's 22,000 white and black rhinos, of which 12,000 are found in Kruger, represent some 93% of these species' world population. Ivory stocks. Kruger experienced significant elephant poaching in the 1980s, which has since abated. It holds over 48 tons of ivory in storage. According to Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna, it is allowed to sell 30 tons. Following approval by CITES, 47 metric tons of stockpiled ivory from Kruger were auctioned on November 6, 2008. The sale fetched approximately $6.7 million which will be used towards increasing anti-poaching activity. The average price for the 63 lots on auction was $142 per kilogram. It is foreseen that the placement of wire traps to procure meat would eventually become the most challenging form of poaching. A scheme has been proposed to reward adjacent communities with the proceeds of game sales in return for their cooperation in game preservation. The larger communities include Boschkrand, Akornak, Hazivu, Hoedsproet, Komatapat, Malilane, Marloth Park, Nelsproet and Phalaborwa. Accommodation. The Kruger National Park has 21 rest camps, as well as 2 private lodge concessions, and 15 designated private safari lodges. The concessions are parcels of land operated by private companies in partnership with communities, who outsource the operation of private lodges. Camping in the park has become popular with tourists and backpackers because it is much less expensive, and open to anyone, requiring no special permission to partake. Rest camps. Designated private lodges. Bushveld camps, Baitla Bushveld Camp, Bayamati Bushveld Camp, Shimuani Bushveld Camp, Sirini Bushveld Camp, Talamati Bushveld Camp. Gates to the Kruger Park. The Kruger Park has the following gates. Wilderness trails. 9 different trails are on offer in the Kruger National Park. Some are overnight and they last several days in areas of wilderness virtually untouched by humans. There are no set trails in the wilderness areas. A visitor walks along paths made by animals or seeks out new routes through the bush. Gallery. See also: Abel Chapman, Battle at Kruger, Great Limpopo Transfrontier Park, Lower Sabi, Maculik, Protected Areas of South Africa, Skukuza. References. Safari in Kruger National Park, external links, South African National Park's official website, Kruger National Park official website, map of Kruger National Park, weekcams in the Kruger.